My dear participants, welcome online for Arctic Europe Tourism Cluster Project's Tech Week. And today we have Cybersecurity in Tourism Workshop Day with our Nicole Pagels. And now I've learned that I won't use her. You can see her full name on the screen, but as of yesterday, when most of you met with her online as well, I didn't remember. I called you Nicole. So that is what she told, that she always gets the feeling that she's done something bad. We call it by the full name. So Nikki, thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Marika.
So Arctic Europe Tourism Cluster is an EU-funded project. Our main funder is Interreg Aurora, and therefore we're able to welcome everyone on board on this webinar series, not only today, but later on the week we have more webinars on the tech series. I'm going to put some more information to the chat for you to see. But without further ado, my name is Marika Tiikkainen. I'm one of the project managers for the project, but today our expert is Nicole Pagels. So the virtual floor is yours.
Fantastic. Virtual floor. I love it. Great. So hello, everybody. Good morning. I can see a lot of names that were online yesterday, but a couple of new ones as well. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole Pagels. And I'm here representing the Nordic Tourism Collective in the Tech Matters programme that they have, really helping to make sense of cybersecurity. Just a recap on yesterday's session, there were 4 key highlights from yesterday's session on cybersecurity within tourism, and particularly the Arctic region. We had a little look at the history of cybersecurity. We also had a little look at the main types of cyber attacks that plague our industry. We then had a quick look at the Nordic or Arctic conundrum, in that we are very, very vulnerable and also very lucrative to cyber attacks, primarily because we are hyper digital. We work with high-end tourism a lot, which kind of puts us on the map, and we're also very seasonal. And then we took a quick deep dive into AI and how that's changing the cybersecurity landscape. And the purpose of today is really to kind of become a bit more practical and look at how we can protect our businesses, how we can protect ourselves, and also what we need to be thinking about when it comes to our customers. So on the agenda, I've kind of cut this down into 3 core bits, because when it comes to practical stuff, a big list of stuff that we're going to go through is sometimes a bit overwhelming. So we're going to start by looking at how we protect our customers. Then we're going to take a little look at how we protect the SME. And for those of you who were on the call yesterday will remember that SMEs make up to 90% of the tourism landscape in the Nordics. So an important area to look after our small, medium sized enterprises. But this session is also designed for the larger people in the larger organizations in the audience, in that the tips and tricks I'll be going through are very individual, are also quite team based. So it's stuff that we should all be doing regardless of what size business we are. And then I'm going to be going through some checklists, and the idea with the checklist is that you can take them away and hopefully educate your peers, your teams, and whoever else might be working with you as well. So let's get started. I have started with our customers. Now, this is something that when you talk about cybersecurity, you normally talk about a business. You normally talk about what do we need to do as a business? What do we need to do to make sure that all of our teams know about cybersecurity, and how do we protect ourselves, essentially. Now, we work in the people's industry, in the tourism sector, which means that we have a responsibility and also kind of a risk factor in that we look after customers from around the world, thousands, if not millions of them. So in this part of the workshop today, I'm going to be looking at those customers and what kind of things we can do to help them pre-departure on the road and back at home, to not just protect themselves, but also to protect our businesses while they are traveling around the world. So starting this off, I think it's important to kind of put in a statement that everybody remembers. Your customers and your guests are your responsibility, particularly while they're in destination, but also all the way through their booking process and post-departure as well. They can also be your weakest link. So as we digitalize as nations, as communities around the world, as tourism businesses as well, our customers are doing the same. So they are bringing in more devices, they're connecting more, they have more apps and software and programs that they're using. And this is important to remember, that not only are they your responsibility to protect, but they can also be a very weak link when it comes to cyber attacks on your business in stay, pre-stay, and also post-stay. In fact, some nice data for you here. The average traveler around the world accesses somewhere between 5 to 10 networks for a week-long trip. Now, what this means is that the average traveler connects to the internet on several different networks as they're in transit and also in destination. So if we think about a traveller that's coming for a week up to the Arctic, they may be coming, for instance, from the US. The first place that they're going to connect is the airport Wi-Fi. They might then connect to the airline Wi-Fi. They might then connect to a coffee shop Wi-Fi on the way. And then they finally arrive in destination and they'll connect to, again, an airport Wi-Fi, then they'll connect to a hotel Wi-Fi, they might connect to an attraction Wi-Fi, they might connect to several restaurant Wi-Fis. So this kind of 5 to 10 is a little bit of a rough estimate worldwide, but it could actually be much, much more than this, considering that we are also a very digital destination up in the Arctic. So this is really good to remember, that each person that actually enters our receptions, comes on our tours, arrives at our airports, is connected to something and has already connected to a lot of other stuff as well, and holds a device that has connected to stuff in their locality as well. So why should we help these guests? Well, this is something that we rarely think that we should do. It's not kind of our responsibility to make sure that that guest is protected digitally, but it's becoming ever more important, particularly from the customer experience point of view. So if you think about a guest that experiences a cyber attack on their own personal devices while they're in destination, it can be the biggest downer of that entire travel experience to them. Similarly, if you have a booking experience where, for instance, a hijacked email compromises your entire database, that customer coming up to the Arctic is probably not going to be the happiest chappy when he arrives. If he even arrives, he might cancel the trip and say, look, these guys haven't got a grip on their emails. Protecting our own networks is also super important if we think about that entire transit pattern of how many different connections we make as travellers while we're getting to destination, in destination, and also on our way home. So dodgy content can essentially come from anywhere. And if we think about kind of particularly that post experience, so when customers return back home and think about their experience, they are still exposed to several different types of connections. They might have active apps, for instance, that they've downloaded in destination. Like, for instance, the Aurora app is very popular in many, many resorts where you know when the Auroras are out and when you go, as well as also active links to different types of booking engines, as well as also OTAs, etc., that are still on our phones when we arrive. So why should we help these guests? Well, it's really, if we think about it from the very simplest of formats, it's to improve the customer experience throughout their journey, but also to protect ourselves and our networks from the dodgy content that they might bring with them. So diving into this then, what do we need to be thinking about pre-departure? I've created a bit of a digital checklist here where we can encourage our guests to do lots of stuff before they even depart. The first bit here is really to back up. So if they are traveling for business, for instance, or that they're taking their business stuff with them, or even their personal stuff, and they're planning on kind of writing a novel or something up in the Arctic, backing up data before you travel is something that's quite important and can be encouraged for our guests. Updating everything protects your businesses first and foremost. So updating all devices and encouraging our travellers to update those devices before they leave protects each individual, but also protects each individual device that then enters your networks. Locking it down, creating strong passwords for devices is really about the guest and their experience. So if they do, for instance, have a device that's stolen or they lose a device, they're less worried about somebody getting in there if they have strong passwords set up before they depart. Activating a Find Me function. This is really for all operational teams within tourism, encouraging customers to put on that Find Me function, whether it's a mobile phone or whether it's a laptop, can really help, because if in case of losing them or in case of theft, they can find their own devices themselves. And more often than not, it's not the case of really theft up in the Arctic. It's often loss or leaving a laptop somewhere in the reception or a mobile phone on a bus. So that Find Me function can help not just the customer actually find their devices and make them happy, but also your operational teams from spending hours trying to figure out where did that customer leave that device. Installing a VPN. Working travellers are becoming more and more prominent, and I'm going to go into this in a little bit when we start to look at kind of how our lives nowadays mould between leisure and business on almost all fronts. Installing a VPN, if you're going to be working on sensitive data in particular, makes sense for the traveller, because that way they know that whatever they're accessing is on a secure network. And decluttering, deleting any sensitive files off the devices that you're traveling with also makes sense for certain types of customers, particularly those that work, for instance, in healthcare. So this is kind of a pre-departure checklist that we can start to think about communicating with our customers. I'm not sure if any of you do so already, but this could be something that can actually help that guest prepare for travel, but also help you to protect your businesses from everybody who walks in through the door. Then we come to the on-the-road traveller. So now we're starting to keep our customers digitally safe in our destinations. And this is all about our reputation as a region, and making sure that those customers, when they arrive, they are not just physically safe, but they are also digitally safe. So here it's good to start advocating things like in-resort vigilance. So public Wi-Fi networks never use sensitive data like banking codes on public Wi-Fi. Use VPNs and mobile hotspots for those sensitive tasks. Turn off connections. If you are working, turn off everything. Turn off your Bluetooth, turn off your Wi-Fi, turn off your hotspots when you're done. There's that Find Me function again. Spot the padlock. This is something that's good to remind travellers of. Quite easy to forget things when you're on holiday. What is a secure site? Charging safely is something that is becoming a thing that we really need to start thinking about in the travel industry. And this has to do with people just plugging in all over the place. So there is a term that is out there called juice hacking. So juice is basically the charge that comes from a charging device. And here the kind of suggestion is really to avoid those public charge outlets that you often get in hotels. You also get them in airports and in different types of transit units, and trying to use your own charger to avoid juice hacking, essentially, or juice jacking. And then locking away those valuable devices so that we prevent theft and loss makes a lot of sense. And that's kind of why we've all got safes as well. Then there's that checklist for when you get back home, and this is really encouraging the traveller to take a look at all those travel apps that they've downloaded, but also those active links that they still might have available on their phones and laptops. So a password refresh, this is actually something that is good, a good habit for all of us really when we're travelling, is that when you get home, change your password, because you never know what's compromised. An app uninstall. So, I mean, you don't need an Aurora app if you then return back to Texas. So it makes sense to kind of encourage those customers that when you arrive home, uninstall that app that you don't use unless you are going to use it in the future. And then another really good habit to kind of get into, a habit of doing basically, is to run a virus scan when you arrive back home, and encouraging customers to do the same, particularly if they've been traveling for business and they've had their kind of work devices with them as well. So that kind of gives us a bit of an overview of what the customer could be doing and what we could be encouraging our customers to do in transit and also in destination and when they return back home. And as I mentioned here, there's a two-pronged kind of reason why we would do this. So you've got the traveller's safety in mind, which means that we care as an industry, but also your business in mind. So if we think that as a small, medium-sized enterprise or even a larger enterprise, we can even encourage half of our customers to be digitally savvy before they arrive, what we're doing essentially also is protecting our own Wi-Fi networks, own outlet points from being infected with cyber attacks, essentially. Now, the second bit of what I'm going to be talking about is really how we then start to look internally towards our businesses and how we protect our businesses in general. And the highlights of this bit will be how we secure our email. And the reason why I'm spending some time on the email is that it's still our most important account within the travel industry. Then we're going to be taking a look at securing online accounts, some password managers, and also updating our own devices to that log off, turn off kind of thinking. And then I'm going to be having a look at various different bits that also affect AI within this. So for those of you who had questions about it yesterday, hold tight, they're coming. So let's start with that email. Securing your business's email accounts is potentially the one single thing that in the tourism industry we could all do to try and protect ourselves, particularly when it comes to phishing attacks, but when it comes to also hackers finding personal information about us as employees and also about our customers. So why do hackers care about our email? Well, they can access information from your email that you've saved about yourself. They can access information that you have saved about your partners. They can contact people pretending to be you if they know what your email password is. And potentially most worrying, they can lock you out of your own online accounts by resetting passwords. So most passwords have a link back to an email address. And when you go to reset that, if you change the password, it's impossible to then get into other online accounts as well. And they can continue to do this with everything that you do in business. So it has a cascade effect for everything that you operationally need to function. So the first bit here is to protect your email using a strong password that cannot be guessed. So things like, for instance, your pet's name, your kids' names, the football team that you support, all of these things that are kind of personal to you can be quite easily guessed, and hackers know how to do this well. You can use password generators. You can also ask AI to help you with a good secure password. But I have a traditional kind of method that I use myself where I take 3 random words and 3 random numbers, and those become my passwords. And this is something I've been doing for the best part of 10 years. When put together, they become harder to hack, and then I update them regularly. So 3 random words, 3 random numbers, that is a good way of manually doing this if you do not have access to other tools or can't remember to use other tools as well. The second piece, which is now standard in pretty much all email software, is the 2-step verification, and it comes in different formats. You can have a text message, you can have authenticator apps, particularly if you're attached to Microsoft, and backup codes depending on what platform you're using. Now, I won't go into this too much, but basically a 2-step verification means that you have a login of some sort into your email, and then you also receive a code from either a text message, an authenticator app, or you have a backup code that you need to put in to access your emails. Now, this is something that as standard we should all be doing, so this should be 100% uptake. And I've put in links in the background. Hopefully, Marika, you'll share this with the audience as well later. That if you don't have this set up, there's a direct link here for doing so. So all you need to do is click and off you go, and it will give you instructions on how to do it so that you are protected on that email. 2-step verification reduces likelihood of attack by up to 90%. Now, this is information from Microsoft, so this is quite good. If we can all do this, then we're 90% there, if we put it that way, particularly with those phishing attacks. The second thing that is now quite standard also for most email providers is a pass key. Now, a pass key is a way of logging in using a unique digital key that you'll never really know. You won't see it. You won't have to remember it. Your password managers normally do this for you. And here too, I've put in a link to Microsoft, Google, and also Apple iCloud on how you can get those pass keys done. This is kind of the next step from that two-factor verification, and is really probably the safest way to protect all of your devices and your emails now. The second piece that I want to talk about, and this is kind of directly in connection to that email, that is often the main kind of gateway for all of our online accounts that we use, whether these are distribution accounts, whether these are management accounts, whether these are Third-party accounts. We have a huge amount of online accounts that we use within the travel industry, and the Data Breaches Investigation Report for 2024 estimates that 77% of hacking-related breaches involve the use of stolen credentials on one or more of these online accounts. So this is something that we need to take as a next step to make sure that all of the other accounts that we're using are secure. The first thing to do is obviously make a list of all of our online accounts. Now, if we look at the travel industry, on average, people have around about 300 online accounts. So that list can be quite vast, and it's a good exercise for all of us to do to know which online accounts are we actually using. The second thing we've already decided that we're all going to do, and that's to secure our business email accounts that are linked to each of these accounts. So whether that's our personal one or a hello @ or an info @, let's secure all of those email accounts. The third thing to do is to change the password regularly, enable that two-step verification, so very similar to our email, and also to create a passkey if we can. Now, I put in bold here that if you are sharing account logins, wherever possible, try and avoid this and create individual logins. Shared account logins are the easiest ones to try and figure out because they have to be remembered by so many people. And if you need to share, create a strict protocol for regular updates. So that password needs to be changed really regularly to make sure that they're not so hackable in that case. So here's that data that the average business has around about 300 accounts that requires passwords. So not only is it good to know what all of those accounts are, so making that list of all of the people that you're working with, but also here it would probably make sense for our businesses to use password managers to remember all those passwords, because manually writing them down is probably not very digitally savvy. It's not also super safe. So those password managers are good to install on all of our kind of software now in the travel industry, especially if you can relate yourself to having around about 300 accounts that you're working with on a daily basis. Now, the next piece is really kind of, for those of you who were with me yesterday, looking at that IoT space within tourism, where we have several different devices that we work with on a daily basis in back offices, but also we work with in terms of kind of what our customers are using within their house. And this is particularly when you look at hotels. If you think about the amount of devices that you have in-house, you have all of your back office devices, you have all of those mobile phones that your operational teams and your commercial teams are using, but you also have all of your guests using things like your TVs. You might have smartware in your rooms, for instance. So there's a lot of devices to think about. And cyber criminals often do break in through these devices by exploiting weaknesses or vulnerabilities within each individual one. Now, I mentioned on the call yesterday, there's a very famous case, you can Google it afterwards, with MGM Resorts in Vegas, where they were hacked through a fish tank, so a smart fish tank. So these IoT devices are vulnerabilities for each of our individual businesses, and they should be kept under control if we can. If we don't update these devices, it's like leaving our back door open, but there are ways that we can do it efficiently. So don't get too scared if you've just realized that you've got thousands of devices within your organization. As a general rule of thumb, switch on automatic updates for these devices if you possibly can, particularly if you do relate to having thousands of those devices, and log off and turn off devices. This helps to protect them from hacks from around the world 24/7. The final piece when it comes to our actual businesses here, before we dive into a little bit on AI, is about your data. Now, we have different types of data normally within our businesses. We have data that we ourselves in our management systems collate. We also have data that our partners collate. We have different types of IoTs that collate data, for instance, like payments. So understanding and knowing what your map of data looks like makes sense for each and every business. So this is an important task I think everybody should do, is to really ask yourselves, where is my data? Like, where is my business data? Where are my customers' data? Where are my payment data? Where is all that data? And then how do you access your data is the second question. How do you as a manager access your data? How do your employees access that data? And do you have third parties that are also accessing that data? And most importantly, is your data backed up somewhere? So is your data in the cloud? Do you have an on-site copy of it? Do you do still things like, for instance, print out in resort lists if you're a hotel? Backing up data is really important, particularly when you're starting to look at several different types of outlets of data as well. I've highlighted here a couple of terms, not to overwhelm anybody, but data mapping and storage is really the kind of the philosophy of understanding where your customer data is. So all of those names, addresses, passport numbers, credit card details, itineraries and loyalty stuff, where is it all stored and who can access it? Because this is also the biggest vulnerability we have when it comes to the reputation of our businesses. Another piece to remember here is how long is that data retained? So understanding laws around how long you can actually retain certain types of data is important, and making sure that that data for that retention period is securely stored and encrypted is really the responsibility of each individual business. So that customer data is super, super important. Obviously, your internal data is just as important, but that customer data, particularly from a reputation point of view, kind of makes or breaks us as an industry as well. So what kind of data do you store? As I mentioned, within the travel industry, it's very common to have many different types of data sets, both direct data sets as also indirect data sets. There is a term that's floating around at the moment, particularly within cybersecurity, that data minimization, particularly when it comes to sensitive data, is almost absolutely necessary to start thinking about. So when you're collecting and processing data, are you processing that data for legitimate purposes? Is there a reason why you need that data, particularly if it's sensitive data, like, for instance, credit cards and customer information? Now, obviously, some of this data is really key to keep, for instance, for marketing purposes and so forth, but that's obviously part of a strategic plan to then store and make sure that all of that data is encrypted so that it's not accessible by externals. But really looking at kind of that data minimization when it comes to very, very sensitive data like birthdays and payments and passport numbers is something that also in the travel industry, I think we need to take very, very seriously. So make sure that you are minimizing that sensitive data because it minimizes your risk as well. And finally, on data, let's all get AI ready. So clean data means better communication with AI. And I'm sure this is something that you're going to be going through the rest of this week as well with the fantastic AI experts that will be talking. So cleaning up your data, not only does it help communicate with AI and all of those fantastic models that exist to make our business function more efficiently, more productively, and to reach our customers better, but this also refers to AI tools that are being rolled out by cybersecurity platforms. So all cybersecurity platforms are looking at how AI can be used and integrated within their systems to make sure that they can protect us for the future as well. And they too lean on clean data. So if we've got a complete mess within our own house, we're not just affecting our commercial AI tools, but we are also affecting the AI tools that our cybersecurity platforms are developing for us. So good to remember on that front as well. Now, here's a nice piece of information, which I'm sure that will also come up later on this week. There are 1 billion users of AI globally. This is data that I've taken out of a report from Stanford University this year that started off back in February with 378 million users, and now we're at billion. So this is really fast growing for all of us globally, and will probably be something you'll be touching on later. But that means that we have an awful lot of people using AI, whether that be our customers or our employees or us as businesses around the world, and it's only set to grow. So how can we help ourselves, as well as also how can our customers help ourselves by using AI within cybersecurity? So I've put in here some ideas now for all of us to start thinking about how we can use these new technologies within this space. So one of the pieces that we can start to do is use AI tools that are readily available to everybody, preferably on a business account. to decipher fakes. So this is really looking at kind of phishing emails, for instance, where we're not quite sure, is this real, is this not? We can use AI to help us kind of detect different types of content that may be fake. Having said that, many emails are legitimately also using AI. So this is important to remember that actually AI is being used for a commercial purpose. So while we're deciphering fakes, we may actually detect a fake that was intended to be a fake. So worth thinking about, but also something that I think is going to start to grow within our industry in terms of detection, but also really understanding what AI is doing for our industry. Here I'd highlight that focusing on links and odd requests within that email is a really good way of deciphering things as a human being. And AI can help us to kind of do this quicker if we're really worried about our employees and maybe have several hundreds of them, and especially those seasonal workers. So focusing on asking AI to help us decipher whether a link or a request is legitimate makes sense. And obviously never trusting an email that asks for payments is just a standard rule that I'd say to everybody. Then you've got the use of AI tools to help monitor activity. And this has started to come out in MarTech, and also certain AI assistants that can help us across our businesses. So we can use now AI assistants to help us remind about security protocols. So this is something as a business that you can start to roll out using AI to really prompt your employees. Do you remember what you need to do today? Then you can use AI assistants to help monitor online traffic, to take a look at data with you and kind of highlight those peaks and troughs. And then you've got AI-powered anti-malware that is worth investing in, and all bigger cybersecurity agencies are already rolling this out, knowing that AI is going to become the biggest risk factor for us in the next 25 years. And then another idea, which is something that we can all do, whether we're a manager or we're a team member, is we can actually start creating material for our staff that might be a little bit more interactive in terms of learning about cybersecurity. So we can create little videos, little images. I did a few before this call, but unfortunately, I don't want to show them just because I had video issues yesterday. But if you want to see some examples, I'm very happy to send them. And you can also create branded checklists for good cybersecurity hygiene. And here I just say that when it comes to AI as well, protecting that email with a really strong password makes a huge amount of sense, because that top piece when it comes to deciphering fakes and legitimately using AI and also hacking different email accounts all has to do at the bottom of the line with a really strong password. So I'm just reminding everybody that even with the use of AI, that unique and strong password for your email is key. Now, using AI within your company, this is something that also probably will come up a couple of times this week, but having a good AI strategy for your company is good also for cybersecurity. So what kind of tools do you give your employees and how can they use it? Ensuring that you have closed corporate AI accounts so that you're not just using kind of free-for-all public access LLMs, for instance, for asking about cybersecurity within your organization. This is something that everybody can set up for free with most LLMs, so make sure you've got that closed corporate accounts that you're giving to your employees. And then look for AI-powered anti-malware, particularly if you're a larger organization. This kind of makes sure that you're ahead of the game when it comes to the latest AI tools that can be used to basically protect your business and also detect AI-powered attacks potentially on your business as well. Now, kind of wrapping up this session, I've created a couple of checklists for your teams, for you, because it all starts with you at the end of the day. And I've also got a little piece on emergency contact. So what happens if we are attacked? Now, the first one really is a daily checklist for all staff. And this is something that is really, it's a good habit to have, but it's also something that can really make a huge difference to your individual businesses. Number one, have you logged out of all of your systems? Now, I'm absolutely sure that not everybody does this on a daily basis, but it is, if we can get into this kind of habit, it is something that can genuinely protect our business the furthest, because it's all about avoiding human error. The other piece is really about asking your own staff that have they experienced something odd? Have they received an odd email, for instance, today? And have they reported it to somebody? Have they told somebody about receiving that odd email today? And it's more about culture than anything else, that actually once you experience something, not just sitting there, ooh, did I do something wrong and then I received an email like this, but actually encouraging people to talk about it means that you can quicker detect if there's something actually going on. Then I put together a weekly checklist for your staff. Have you changed your email password weekly? Now, I doubt that people tend to do this, but it's also a very good habit to start to roll out, particularly in tourism industries in high season. So changing that email password regularly and asking your staff to do so, maybe in a meeting once a week, everybody sit down, right, that's it, mobile phones out, we're going to change our passwords. Again, there in an open forum asking, has anybody seen anything odd this week? Has anybody received any phishing emails? Is anything like this going on? Did you report it in like a group sphere that encourages others to also say, hey, by the way, I also saw that, and I also saw that. And then you also start thinking, actually, this is something that's maybe a problem. And then have you updated the device that you're in charge of? Now, I'm going to go through this in a second, and this has to do with the IoT part of our business. But before I do, educating your staff on the detection of cyber attacks is probably the one single thing that all tourism businesses can do to try and protect against those phishing emails, ransomware, and DDoS attacks. So creating a culture of speaking up and encouraging reporting is something that we can all do and make it a positive thing when you do it, rather than something that then penalizes the individual. Now, actions from management. So this is kind of for all of you business owners out there, and also for those who might be in charge of wider teams. I showed you a map of a technology kind of diagram for an attraction yesterday. Mapping out all of your technology pre-season is something that we could all do to make sure that we know exactly where our vulnerabilities are, but also what we have in-house, what's necessary and what's unnecessary, and kind of cleaning it out pre-season. The second piece here is it secure? Does that particular device or does that particular software have the credentials to be secure? And is it helping your company to stay secure as well? And this third piece I put in very bold, and this has to do with all of those devices that we have in our back offices, as well as also in our customers' use. And devices and systems are very, very hard to stay on top of if you don't have somebody designated within your team to just simply update software and update devices. So particularly looking at that SME, this is something that you can also encourage teamwork on. So whenever you have, for instance, a device, you can say, actually, within the team, who wants to take care of all of the TVs in the hotel rooms? Or who wants to take care of all of the laptops within the back office? Who wants to take care of all of our mobile phones? And simply designating a person in charge of monitoring that that device has been updated on a regular basis means that you don't have to do it yourself, and you spread out kind of the responsibility of updating devices and systems on a regular basis, making it a team effort, not just one that's yours. Monitoring traffic on your own website every 2 weeks is something as a manager that could be really, really good, both from a commercial point of view, but it also kind of highlights spikes and troughs that could be questionable. And follow your daily and weekly checklists yourself. Leading by example is something that all of our teams need and should start really, really with the management itself. And the final piece that I've got here is actually setting up your tech networks. Again, something that you could do in that pre-season period. I've put in 4 different networks that the average tourism business should have. One for your IoT. Ooh.
Let's see, something happened. Did we lose you, Nicole? Let me see. She should be online, but I think
I am back online.
Yes, there you are.
Yes, I'm so sorry, guys. Talking about some tech issues. There we go. It's good to always have an example. Yes. Right, let me see if I can just stop sharing because I can't see my own screen and get back to my slide. Sorry about that, everybody, but that was like a real life example of exactly what we're looking at here. Right. So now we're talking about networks. So that was my internet that went down. So there we go. Fantastic. So I put in here 3 different types of networks for each of our individual tourism businesses to make sure that they're separate. So the first one is that smart device network. Having all of your devices on one network means that they're separate from everything else that you're doing as a business. So if you have a TV that's compromised, or a thermostat that's compromised, or that fish tank that's compromised, it's not going to affect your entire business. The second one that I put in here is the POS and the payment system. Now, the POS is the most targeted device in the whole of the travel industry because it has the most amount of financial gain because it houses credit card details. So I put that as a separate piece, and it's often good to have that POS or payment system as a completely separate part of your business. Then you've got your guest Wi-Fi and all of those thousands and thousands of lovely guests that you receive from all over the world. Keeping them on their own public Wi-Fi and their own network makes sense because they also then stay away from your daily operations. And then you've got your internal network access, which really looks at what your staff need to do on a daily basis and making sure that is the most protected network that you have in your own organization. So 4 different Wi-Fi networks. It sounds costly, but it's definitely worth doing because if you can segregate where all of these individual components lie, it means that you can really hone in on making sure that the core of your business is as protected as possible. And then where do you go to if something happens? So I've taken out the biggest organizations that we have across the Nordics, who are our cyber emergency response teams. They sit in different organizations in different countries. So I put in the links here for Finland, Sweden and Norway. But essentially, they all do the same thing. They help you if something goes wrong. They all have a hotline that you can call. They will all help to get in touch with police. They will help you when it comes to kind of recovering data. They will help you in the case of ransom attacks. And they will also make sure that you can try and get back online as possible and communicate with your customers in an efficient way. So they know what to do if something happens. The police may do. In some places, they're more savvy than others, and they might have cybersecurity teams of their own. But these guys definitely will do. And even if you're the smallest organization on the planet, their responsibility is everybody, not just somebody. Now, for instance, I'm based in Finland, so I actually follow the Finnish site quite often because it also updates on certain kinds of attacks that are happening in the country in general. So for instance, in September, they put out that Microsoft Outlook has had quite a few phishing attacks over the past week. So you can also sit there maybe on a weekly basis, go have a look and see what are the general trends within cybersecurity in my country and make sure you stay on top of it because we're not an isolated industry. We are one that is connected to everything else as well. And I'll finish off with a statement where attackers exploit your vulnerabilities. So knowing what your vulnerability is as a business and an organization means that you know where your weakest links are and you can do something about it. And that's it from me, even with a live example of an internet downage. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll take them now. And I will also be sharing this with Marika. So hopefully you can all take those checklists, start to communicate with your customers as well as your internal teams, and hopefully also create some great cybersecurity habits of your own.
Excellent. This was perfect. Thank you so much, Nikki, for this really good insight to this. And I think that many of the things we've heard so many times before, but do we do that? Do we really walk the talk here? So I have to say that I felt a few things in my everyday working life. And also as another very good example, probably many of you guys found our webinars for this week. It was under Meta, where you find the form where you could sign up. And that was already some red flagging what we did when we saw the sign-up list, because it was clearly that we had sign-ups coming from very suspicious sources. So obviously, if you put, let's say from your business point of view, you're collecting a newsletter audience, or you're doing some sort of polls in order to do advertising or marketing communication towards your target audiences, and you might use this type of an communication within social media, which includes forms where you should insert them, and then you take the list of those who want to communicate it with you, and there you might have those suspicious entries. And this is the reason why we also we want to scan who we allow inside into our webinars. So far, we haven't had any of those suspicious emails trying to push in, because obviously when we're trying to send them the confirmation, like, hello, like you received it 1 hour before, like, okay, we're going to begin with our webinar in 1 hour. Welcome. Here's the link once more. So we can see that that email will not go through to this type of a recipient, which we already flagged as a suspicious one. And it's not unheard of that your meetings and your maybe webinars can be accompanied with these types of trolls. Even there are some examples of that, but that's a good example if you do this type of communication where you gather those who you are going to communicate within your business. So very good to be hands-on with that as well. But having said that, my dear participants, would you have some questions or comments to Nikki? She's here now at your disposal before we wrap this up. So it's time for questions and answers if you have any. So fire me. Yeah, let me just check. Okay, well, I have the chat box open, so if you want to have your question or comment there, you're more than welcome to do that. And obviously, like Nikki mentioned, that both the recording and the material, we will put everything in a bundle, and we are going to send everything to you with the recording links and all of the other material at the end of the Tech Week. And now we have a question. So as a password manager, what is your opinion on using Google Chrome?
I don't think necessarily a browser is the best one to protect a business, because you have so many different platforms. So Google Chrome is very good if you have all of your different software in Google, but you need to really have a look at all of your different online accounts to make sure that you have a password manager that's able to actually house all of them. So Google Chrome is great, but only if you have everything in Google. Otherwise, I'd look at something a bit more robust that also takes a look at particularly OTA, extranets, that takes a look at all of your third-party websites that you might be logging into, to make sure that all of those passwords are also in there. Now, with password managers, I'd also say it's really handy to have one that creates new passwords all the time, that doesn't just store your passwords and ask you to create them, but the more sophisticated password managers actually create them for you, and they're also becoming AI powered, which means that they're kind of more robust in the way that they operate. So yeah, hopefully that's a good answer.
Very good. Yes. To continue, would you have any recommendations for this?
I would love to give out recommendations, but then I'm selling on behalf of companies. So this is something that what I would recommend you do is, when you do a bit of a search for password managers, you type in the type of organization you are, how many external kind of platforms that you're using, and how many staff you have. And the recommendation will come to you that way. I mean, this is a simple Google search, or you can use AI for it. But being quite specific about the type of business you are and how many external partners you work with will give you something that is secure enough for your organization. Yeah. So I try to avoid these recommendations, because if I say too many of them, then I get in trouble from those who I don't mention. So yeah.
Yes, obviously there are many, and now with the AI coming into the picture, they're becoming more sophisticated. But if not yet, I think that this is your final hour to go and check your desk front of yourself and your employees, especially if you're in a field of a tourism and travel business, that you have a front desk, that there isn't any post-it notes there with all of the passwords and everything. So that is definitely old-fashioned. So anything, even if you wouldn't go as far as the self-generative kind of password manager, do something about it. So this is something that will really affect our vulnerability. And there has been these breaches. We were talking, Nikki, with you before, that also, for example, in our countries, in Finland, Sweden, and Norway, it's not always the big, like if we remember from yesterday, it's not always the big companies that face these issues. It can be the smallest of companies with our very familiar platforms and softwares that we use for bookings and payments, etc. That may become the target of this type of an attack. So this is something not to take lightly.
Yeah. Very good. There is something that I'd kind of like to finish on, and this is the trend now with AI. So AI, from a business perspective, I think we'll get a grip on it quite quickly. We're a digitally savvy part of the world. But getting a grip on it with our customers is something that I think is something worth thinking about. And if we think that AI is used in text, it's used in visuals, but also in audio, and audio being quite pivotal here, in that open AI LLMs particularly, they can hear you talk about sensitive stuff. And it's not so much maybe within our organizations, but it's maybe with all those customers that have their phones on. So it's worth thinking about also now starting to educate customers about how to stay digitally safe, but also how they can help to protect your businesses while they're in destination particularly. So yeah. So yeah, anyway, I thought I'd mention audio. So my Siri hears me all the time and sings to me "Bar Bar Black Sheep." So if Siri can sing to me "Bar Bar Black Sheep," imagine what kind of sensitive data can be leaked through your customers with those audios open to things like, for instance, LLMs from around the world. Not to scare you, but that's why it's quite a good idea to educate your customers as well as also your teams. Right now, in my opinion.
Exactly. It was only last week I refused. I knew that the source was trustworthy, or I got a phone call. It was actually to do with insurances. And it was my insurance person. Everything was okay. But then they were on the phone that, okay, and finally we need to have your social security number in full for us to proceed with your request. And I was like, no, I'm not going to say it out loud on the phone. Like, sorry, this is, they should know better. So
yeah.
Also having those limits, and it's you're very on the point there, that we never know who is listening these days. It is a little bit eerie in a way, but this is just the reality where we are living at the moment.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it can be combated with education, because the more vigilant we all become as an industry, the more we kind of educate our customers as well to be vigilant. It helps to make us all more secure. So I think, for me at least, education is the key here to getting all of this right, if we put it that way. So yeah. Good.
Exactly.
Thank you, everybody. Can I just quickly ask, who's learned something new today? Good. Fabulous. Awesome.
Yes. Nice. Great. Set of hands. We see raised up. Excellent.
So all of this material that I'll be sharing with Marika, you're very, very welcome to take it to your teams, but also copy, paste and educate. So happy cybersecurity, everybody.
Thank you so much. I already put some links to the chat box if you want to participate on more of the webinars during this week, and just make sure that you'll receive all of the recordings and material via email to yourself, but also if you want to refer to a colleague. So just pop there into the form and make sure that your colleagues will receive the material as well. And also they are viewed on YouTube channel of Arctic Europe Tourism Cluster Project. But Nikki, once again, thank you so much. This was eye-opening. I think that we all have now tasks to do as soon as possible and to take to our teams and organizations. Thank you so much for this on our behalf and on behalf of everyone. And also, I wish a good, secure cyber path to all of you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you very much, Marika, for having me.
Perfect. It was a pleasure. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.